Welcome to the August the 15th, 2006 taping of It Happened in Grand Prairie, Texas. And the history of our city, as maybe some people have made that history in the past. And at today's time, we're having two on the dais today that are making history this very day. We are very, very excited to have two very illustrious people in the education business with us today. And first of all, we have Dr. David Barbosa, which we lovingly call His Majesty. Welcome to the set, young man.
Always a pleasure to be here, Ruthie.
It's always a pleasure to have you, Dr. Barbosa. And Director of Communications, the wonderful one, and Mr. Sam Buckmeyer, we're so pleased that you have now attained the Director of Communications when I really wanted to make you something else, like maybe a PR director and all of this. And you have a lot of communications to offer, so we're pleased that you came with Dr. Barbosa today. Because when you travel around in high cotton with the superintendent of schools, that is really good, isn't it?
That's right.
That is wonderful. Oh, Dr. Barbosa, we want to talk about the Grand Prairie ISD, which is very near and dear to all of our three hearts here. I'd like for you to tell us a little bit about, kind of give us a mini history of last year and some of the exciting things that have happened, and maybe some of the things that you'd just like to put on this history tape about your experience during the year of 2005 and 2006.
I'll be happy to do that, Ruthie. Of course, we started the school year knowing that we continue to grow in the Grand Prairie Independent School District, knowing that we have to have sufficient facilities to accommodate the students. And indeed, when we went to the end of the year and took account, we had increased by somewhere around 900 students over the course of the year. So we continue to grow, and as a result, I think probably in the near future, I think the school board will have to be making some decisions relative to the possibility of another bond package, which could provide us with some additional school facilities to work with the youngsters. As you know, shortly after the school year began, something that happened in New Orleans along the Gulf Course impacted the city of Grand Prairie and impacted Grand Prairie Independent School District, and that was the influx of Hurricane Katrina evacuees into our school district. As you know, that happened for us. The buses brought loads of evacuees to Grand Prairie on the Labor Day weekend, and I remember that weekend being called by Tom Hart and saying, we need your help, and we're going to be welcoming some folks from down in New Orleans. Would like to have access to the Lee Middle School facility, because these folks have not had the opportunity to bathe or shower, take care of any of their hygiene needs for several days. He said, we'll also need someone to feed these people, and we were able to do that, both feed and take care of their hygiene needs at Lee Middle School. We did that for a couple of weeks until these folks got a little more settled and were distributed out into the community.
Approximately how many did you handle?
We had actually, in terms of enrolling in our schools, we had approximately 260 students who came into our schools. So that was 260 students that we didn't expect. We had expected and projected probably somewhere around 500 to 600, but of course with this additional 260 students, we went well above that. But I have to say that our staff rose to that challenge.
Oh, that's great.
And all of our schools welcomed these youngsters and welcomed their parents and made them feel at home. And my sense, Ruthie, is that as we begin the school year this year, that probably a large majority of those students will still be in our schools. I think those families, for the most part, have decided to remain in Grand Prairie and make this their permanent home. So we expect somewhere probably around 225 of those students to be with us.
Were they dispersed all throughout the ISD in different grade levels?
They were. I know that Houston Elementary School had a large number, probably the elementary school with the largest number. I'd say Crockett Elementary was the next largest number in terms of elementaries. At the middle school level, probably Lee was hit by a significant number, as was Adams Middle School. At the high school level, we saw most of those youngsters go to South, interestingly enough.
Yes.
So South Grand Prairie High School and South Grand Prairie Ninth Grade Center welcomed the largest number of high school students.
What kind of a jolt was this for the teachers receiving students that had no credentials or anything to go on?
Well, of course, you just kind of
Play it by ear?
Played it by ear and did what you had to do. You're absolutely right. They came to us without any kind of transcripts, any kind of record of what their achievement had been in the schools that they had attended in New Orleans. But we adjusted. Obviously, we talked to the parents, we talked to the youngsters. They told us what grades they were in, and of course, we placed them in those grades. And the teachers, as I said a few minutes ago, responded magnificently. The students responded well, welcomed them into the schools, and I think I can say with all truth and candor that the students have adjusted fairly well, and I think are moving along, progressing academically. We did find that in most cases, the youngsters who came to us as a result of that hurricane were not doing as well academically as the students here, so we've provided them with some additional services. And as you know, the federal government...
That means tutoring and all of this?
Exactly. Tutorial sessions, Saturday schools, special classes that we had for some of these youngsters. And we will continue those as we go through this year. You're aware that the federal government and state government have provided us with some additional monies for that, and so we've set aside those monies for those students. We've hired some additional teachers. We hired a counselor who also was a Katrina evacuee, and obviously experienced that firsthand, and who now is here and working with us as a counselor, working specifically with our evacuee students, helping them deal with some of the emotional issues that revolved around that. And they've worked with the parents, with the families, had some sessions with families this spring where we got together and talked about what needed to happen and how we can support them as they tried to stabilize their lives.
Were these students all English-speaking students, or did you have some language problems, or what?
I am not aware with these students that there were any language differences. I think all of them came to us speaking English, so fortunately language with that particular group of students was not a problem.
That is really great. All right, now how did your teachers react?
I think the teachers responded very well. I think we communicated with them beforehand, told them that these youngsters would be coming, and as I said earlier, we didn't place a burden on one particular school or a few schools. Most of these students were distributed out in almost every one of our schools. So that means the burden was not placed on one school. It was really shared by everyone, if you want to call it a burden. I don't think we see it as that. They were our students, and we want to deal with them as our students and treat them as our students.
How did our majestic Board of Education react to all of these things? I know that they were apprehensive about how things would go, and it just seems like that everything is just perfect for those students. Isn't that wonderful?
Well, it is, and I think the board was aware of the activities that the teaching and administrative staff took, and were supportive of the kind of decisions that were made relative to those students.
And it didn't ruin your budget because they paid?
There were monies provided, as I've said, by the federal government, although those monies did come in a little bit late, and we made whatever adjustments we needed to make to bring on the personnel that we needed, but we have had support financially from both the federal government and the state government.
Well, you've worked wonderfully with some of the organizations in the city of Grand Prairie, the volunteer groups like the Lifeline Shelter and the Seroptimus Club and all of the others that are interested in things like that, and especially your PTAs. Did the PTAs aid and abet you a lot in this?
PTAs were very helpful, and of course, as you know, those PTAs are based at each of our campuses,
yes,
and they're aware of the youngsters who enrolled in their schools, and they were aware of some of the needs that they had from a clothing standpoint, from a shelter standpoint, from making sure that they had sufficient food to eat and things of that nature, and they pitched in also. And as I said earlier when I started, it was just a a total community effort. The city obviously was very much involved in providing leadership for that, but our school community and our parents rose to that occasion and assisted in welcoming those students.
What sort of help did you get for the feeding of those children, whether you provided breakfast for them or lunch or whatever?
Well, all of those students automatically qualified for free and reduced lunches. Mm-hmm. So without question, they were provided with the same kind of ID tag that our other students have. And that's pretty unobtrusive, meaning that yes. The other students don't know that they're being yes. Given free and reduced lunches. They go through the line and they simply scan their little ID card, and, yes. and that's all there is to it. Obviously, they were in need of that. When their parents came here with them, they had nothing. As you know, all they had were the clothes that they were wearing, and if some of them were fortunate, perhaps they had a bag of some of their most important valuables and other things that they were able to rescue from their home. But by and large, they had absolutely nothing. And so everyone has pitched in to try to provide for their needs.
Well, I know that you wanted to be obliged to take care of the students, but all of the time you're getting these students. There are parents floating around out here in the city of Grand Prairie, and did you give any direction to the help of seeing that they had jobs or places to live, or was that the city's responsibility?
That really was, I know the city worked on that,
yes.
And as we became aware of parents who were seeking employment, then mm-hmm. our social workers and our counselors would refer them to the appropriate city agency.
Good.
Even as federal assistance became available, and they were, as you know, providing some financial assistance to these families, we would make sure that the families of our children, the parents, knew where they needed to go to be able to access those kinds of resources. But the city obviously provided a great deal of assistance in that area, both housing, shelter, and clothing, and some of those other needs.
Mm-hmm. Well,
jobs.
Yes, we didn't really consider those as homeless children like we do in the Lifeline shelter that Christine Gonzalez mm-hmm. works with Angela and Georgia and some of the others in this, and I just appreciate so much what the schools are doing to support that, because through your direction, Christine is able to help us notify
right.
and be notified of the ones that actually need assistance in that. And what do you think about that program?
Well, I think it's a much needed program. I think if you talk to any typical person in Grand
yes.
Prairie and you talk about homelessness, they probably aren't aware of homeless
That's
people.
Right.
They don't, at least when they see people, they don't consider them as being homeless. But we have a significant number of homeless people in our school district. We provide assistance to those youngsters. Obviously, other agencies provide assistance. And I have to tell you, Ruthie, I think that number is becoming greater and greater every year.
It amazes me.
I think what you're seeing is a real division among our population. The affluent, I think, are becoming more affluent, and unfortunately, we're having folks at the other end that
yes.
that number is growing also, the poorer folks who have nothing or very little.
What kind of turnover do you have in schools when you receive a certain amount of students by week or by month? What kind of turnover? Do you have an amazing amount?
Well, that's an interesting question, because we were looking at that just recently, and we have about somewhere between a 30 to 35% mobility rate, which means that in one given year, 1/3 of our students turn over.
Will be gone.
That's correct.
Yes.
They come, they enroll, and they're gone, and others come in. So there's a constant turnover of students that come into our schools, and obviously we have the challenge of educating those youngsters, and it is indeed a challenge.
I noticed in the paper yesterday, Mr. Hinojosa said a lot of kids didn't show up for the first day of school. What does that do to your finances from the state?
Well, as you know, the money we receive from the state is based on the number of students who were in school
mm-hmm.
on
yes.
any given day.
Mm-hmm.
So it does impact us. However, I will tell you that we were surprised a great deal yesterday, which, as you know, was
yes.
the first day of school,
yes.
with the numbers that we had. We had looked at the numbers last year, the first day of school, and compared it with the numbers this year, and we had somewhere around 1,300 more students this year on the first day of school
On the first day.
than we had last year. So it doesn't appear that the numbers are diminishing in any way. And we're projecting that we'll probably be, when it's all said and done, the enrollment in our school district will probably be somewhere around 24,500 to 25,000 students. So we continue to grow, as I indicated when we started.
Oh, and that's from the pre-K all the way
Yes,
up
ma'am.
to the 12th grade.
We started with pre-kindergartners who were 4 years old, and we go on up to the seniors who were obviously 12th graders.
And some of them could be 17, 18, 19, or whatever, couldn't
Yes,
they?
ma'am, that's
Yes, they
true.
can.
Some of them have
Yes.
taken a shot at grade level more than once.
Yes, oh, that's wonderful. I'm going to let you rest a minute. I need to talk with Mr. Sam about the
Very good.
foundation, because I know that you're responsible for us having a foundation and the continuance of it. And Mr. Sam, please tell me where we stand on that foundation and what can just the regular old folks in Grand Prairie, Texas do to help make that more affluent.
Well, first let me say that we do have a very vibrant foundation board. And they've been growing the foundation for several years now.
Yes.
And we're really getting to the point where we have some events throughout the year that obviously aid us in gathering much needed funds
Yes, yes.
to enrich the already existing programs that we have in the
Yes.
district. I think you're aware of our character camp and our scholarship program.
Yes.
Those are some programs that have been done for many, many years, but obviously it requires dollars to sustain those.
And volunteers, too.
And volunteers, absolutely.
Yes.
So we have had our banquet yearly. We've done that for 3-4 years now. We do
And it's
that.
always fun.
And it's always fun. It's
Yes.
always a good event that we have at your namesake facility here in
Yes.
Grand Prairie. But we've added something in the past few years. This will actually be our 3rd annual Foundation Golf Tournament. And this year, October 9th, we're actually going to have the opportunity not only to hold the golf tournament, but to honor local Grand Prairie citizen,
Oh, good.
Mr. Bill Arnold.
Mr. Bill, how
We
wonderful.
want to do that in his honor. He has been a state legislator. He has been a longtime educator and administrator in the district.
He's been president of the Chamber of Commerce.
That is correct. That is
Yes.
correct. So
And
it was a
he
thrill for us.
He was my appointee as my president-elect that got him in the chair so he could be president of the Chamber of Commerce, and I thought that was a real coup.
That's great.
That's one of my great accomplishments.
One of your many great accomplishments.
And
Well, again,
tell me about the golf tournament.
we have this tournament. The deadline for entries is September 15th. But we encourage people, if they're interested in just sponsoring the tournament or actually participating in it itself,
Yeah.
we want them to contact us if they need more information or if they want to register. Our liaison to the foundation is Miss Patty Busby, and she can be reached at 972-237-5300. And she has all the information that anybody would need, or she can help them register a team to participate, or if they just want to be a sponsor of the
Boy,
foundation.
with big bucks, and they could do that really easy, couldn't they?
Absolutely.
Is this being held out of town or in town?
It is in town. I do believe it's at Prairie Lakes. That's where we had it. We did that last year. So we're going to have that again.
That's where Rotary had theirs and dedicated it to me, and it was a smash. And Tom Hart was the manager of that, and he got us big bucks. So put it on him and tell him we need some of those people that he invited to that one
We'll do
to
that.
come help the foundation.
I hope if he's watching today,
Oh, yes.
let him know we're going to call.
Get him on point. Oh, that's good. And this is going to be a fun thing, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Is it a shotgun?
Yes, a lot of fun. Starts at 9 a.m. in the morning.
That's a little late for golf, but
Well,
of
there
course
are a
now
few
that's...
festivities before.
Oh, yes.
Then we have the
Oh, yeah.
tournament.
Have
few
you kind of a
festivities
little
after.
breakfast, a
Yes.
continental breakfast,
Yes.
and all of the good stuff. Who's the president of the board? I mean, of your foundation?
That is Dr. Carolyn Wicker.
Oh, good. Oh, wonderful. She's great. She's also a Rotarian, so you've got it on both sides of the deal. Okay. Oh, yeah. And I'm putting all these names down because that way I may have to interview her to bring this a little bit more up to date.
Great.
Yes, that's wonderful. What else is happening in communications?
Well, we're off to a good year already. When this show is being aired, we've had 2 days of school, and so
Yes.
far it's been a really good start to the year. We're very excited. We know we have challenges in front of us, but we approach those as opportunities.
Well, at one time on this television show, I had a very fine young man that had been my director probably 12 or 13 years. And then someone purloined him from Comcast at that time and took him away to Grand Prairie, Texas, and he's loving it apparently.
And I want you to know that
Louis Tovar?
Louis Tovar has done a fantastic job for the district.
Oh, that is so wonderful.
He's brought a new component to our communications plan, and like I said, he's doing a fantastic job. He's worked very, very well, and it's been a good fit for the district.
Oh, that is really wonderful. And has two wonderful babies now that that he is so proud of, and works the Tron for the Rangers and does all, and that's such an exciting thing. So you have a young man with quite an expertise, don't you?
And he's a very busy young man.
Busy young man, that's right. Well, I appreciate your office so much, Mr. Sam, because I have never called out there that I might have got one or two times gotten you on a recording, but always I get an answer and someone calls back. And that's so critical nowadays when you call a number and they put you on all of these automatic things and punch 6 more buttons and stomp your foot and then punch 3 more, and oh, it's the pits. But the Grand Prairie schools have really been wonderful. I want to thank you for your input to that. And how long have you been with the Grand Prairie ISD, the first and second tenure, all of it put together?
I think the first tenure was 3 years, and this next tenure has been 9 years.
That's good.
I think that's about right.
You're getting ready to have an anniversary party, so we'll have to celebrate, aren't we? All right. Now let's get back to Dr. Barbosa, because you mentioned that you might have to have a bond issue, and that means new schools. Where are you growing?
Actually, our secondary enrollment is growing significantly. Both of the high schools, and Ruthie, you are aware that 5 years ago we decided to build 2 ninth grade centers.
Yes.
Because we were beyond capacity at both Grand Prairie High School and South Grand Prairie High School. So we went with the ninth grade concept, and as you know, we built a brand new facility adjacent to Grand Prairie High School, and
Yes.
then the old Jackson Middle School became the ninth grade center for South. Well, what has happened between when ninth grade centers opened 5 years ago and now is that both of the high schools are, actually South is about at the point where they were when they had 4 grades. We now have the same number with 3 grades. So the numbers continue to go up at the high school level. So I think without question, I think the board is going to be faced with a difficult decision about the possibility of a 3rd high school in that bond package.
Well, couldn't they be real clever and make the ninth grade center the 9th and 10th grade, and by adding a few rooms or something like that, and keeping our concept of our 2 precious, because the Gopher Warrior Bowl is perfect, but if we added the Gopher Warrior Nebulous Bowl, I'd have a hard time with that one.
Well, that's why I said the board's going to be faced with that difficult decision, because
it is going to be difficult.
Clearly a decision has to be made. Will we build a 3rd high school? Will it, if that decision is made, will it be a comprehensive high school similar to both Grand Prairie High School or South Grand Prairie High School? Or might it be a specialty high school, for example, one that focuses on technology and trades and careers and things of that nature? From my perspective, I think that's what makes sense. I think we have to acknowledge that not all of our students are going to go to college, although they certainly need to be provided the education that makes that possible if that's what they choose to do. On the other hand, if they choose to go into the workforce upon graduating from high school, we think it makes sense to equip them with some skills that they can use to access some I think good jobs that can support them and support their families.
On a certain street right off of 14th Street in Grand Prairie, Texas, a huge new apartment complex just did spring up overnight, and all of a sudden they didn't bring a schoolroom with them.
That's
and
true.
They live in Dallas on Southeast 14th and Grand Prairie, Texas.
Yes, ma'am.
What's happening?
Well, obviously, as you just indicated, that apartment complex perhaps didn't spring out quite overnight, but it was it
blossomed quickly.
Came to fruition very quickly, as you know. And clearly that is straining our elementary enrollment at Crockett Elementary
Yes.
School. But I'll share with you that, again, in that possible bond package that the board's going to have to consider, we're going to have to look at one or two elementary schools.
Okay.
And one of those would be to service that growing area.
That area.
You know that where we built Arnold Middle School,
Yes.
which we built a few years ago, we have some additional acreage there where we can locate an elementary school there.
Okay.
So that would most likely be the plan to, if we get a bond package approved, we can build an elementary school there that can accommodate that growth. I was surprised yesterday. I drove around, I visited 13 schools on the first day of school, and I hadn't been over by the lake where they have that new residential area
Yes,
going
area.
up there. I hadn't been there for about 2 months, and I was surprised at the number of houses that
Yes,
are being
that are
built
being
out
built
there.
there. And
So
some
that's-
big houses.
Those are large houses,
Yes.
and again, from what I could gather, they're selling very quickly, and they're going up very fast. So again, that's going
You'll
to
get that?
that's going to tax our schools, both the middle school and the elementary schools in that area.
That's wonderful. We have 3 minutes left on this interview. I want to save 1 minute at the end of the show for you to thank everyone that made all of the things happen in the transition with Katrina and all of this, and that everyone took apart. But is there anything you'd like to say to the kids or to anyone in a 2-minute time when you just look out at your camera and just say, I'm just enjoying being superintendent, and I'm enjoying y'all doing what I tell you to do, and let's just keep this rolling along.
Well, I think, Ruthie, what I'd like to say is obviously we've just started a new school year.
Yes.
And I don't think anybody would argue with me that the education of their children is
It's
very,
key.
very important.
Priority.
There's no question that if their children don't get an education, that they're going to have limited access to a viable job, a good life. And so what I would say to the parents and members of the community is that we need their support to educate their
Yes.
children. We need their support in the way of helping build character, helping us discipline them, sending them to school when they ought to be there, sending them on time, and having them ready to come into school motivated and anxious and ready to learn. And we would ask for support from parents and community for that very thing.
Now I want you to thank your teachers.
Well, as usual, the teachers
They
are
did a wonderful job.
they're the heart of everything we do, and they have to put up with a lot of sometimes unreasonable requests from parents, sometimes demands from other people in the community. Their focus is on youngsters, and we're working with them to provide support for them to make sure that our children are well educated, and we thank them for the work that they do.
That's wonderful. In the 1 minute we have left, I'm going to thank both of you all for bringing this segment, this mini history of 205 and 206, and some of the things that were faced, and some of the things were worked out, and some of the miracles that you made happen for families and for boys and girls that really did not belong to us when we began school. And so I want to thank y'all for being here today, and y'all are wonderful. Appreciate you so very, very much.
We appreciate being here.
Thank you, Ruthie.
And this is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do, and that we document it correctly.